Hey y'all, it's Dawn, and I'm so glad you're back. I've got another fun, budget-friendly DIY video for you today. I used another cross from my stash and removed the twine from the top. I then filled the hole at the top with spackling and let it dry. I used 220 grit sandpaper and smoothed out the spackling on the cross. This DIY was inspired by a little shop over on Etsy, Little August Ranch. I'll leave a link in the description to the shop. And used a baby wipe to remove the dust. I painted the cross with folk art chalk paint and wiped it with a baby wipe before it had time to dry. I used my Cricut and cut out a stencil with the word forgiven and applied it to the cross. I wanted the design to be as crisp as possible. I applied a layer of Mod Podge over the stencil and let it dry. The Mod Podge helps the bleed through when stenciling, meaning the paint won't seep under the stencil. Once the Mod Podge was dry, I used a Dollar Tree makeup sponge and a clothespin to stencil the design onto the cross. I used a pouncing motion to cover the stencil. When stenciling, you don't want to rub the paint across the stencil. This will cause it to bleed. Pouncing is the best way I have found to avoid this. Before the paint dried, I removed the stencil and used a weeding tool to remove the remainder of the vinyl. Once it was dry, I used the same paint I used on the stencil and dry brushed it onto the cross for a weathered, rustic look. I hot glued one of these small squares to the back of the cross so it would stand up. And just look at how stinking cute it turned out. Today's video is part of the Christ is Risen collab hosted by Favy over at Arrows DIY. The playlist is full of DIYs celebrating the fact that Christ is risen. So many amazingly talented creators have joined in on this playlist. You will find links to the host and this wonderful playlist in the description. Be sure to stick around to the end to see how you can be entered to win all 3 of these DIYs. Now back to the video. I found this little wood frame in my stash. I had already stained the outside of the frame with antiquing wax for another project, but apparently never used it. Why? I don't know. I taped off the inside edges with painter's tape. And painted the inside with folk art sheepskin chalk paint. This DIY was inspired by Timber House Shop over on Etsy. I'll leave a link to the store in the description. I used my Cricut and cut out the stencil and applied it to the sign. I applied a layer of Mod Podge over the stencil to help with bleed through when I stenciled it. I used a Dollar Tree makeup sponge and a clothespin to apply the paint to the stencil, using a pouncing motion. Once the paint had dried a little, but wasn't completely dry, I removed the stencil. I had a few spots that I had gotten the dark paint on, so I simply used a small paintbrush and touched them up. I love how this little tiare tray sign turned out. Perfect for an Easter tiare tray, or to simply sit on a table or shelf. Let me know what you think in the comments. I used this wooden cross I found in my stash and removed the twine from the top. Then applied some of this gel stain using a baby wipe. The idea for this garland came from Blessed Bayou on Etsy. I'll leave a link to the Etsy store in the description. I placed a piece of tape on the end of some white cotton string and began stringing the beads. I have had these beads in my stash and they were perfect for this Easter garland. I have been trying to mostly use items from my stash for the past few months, and it has been fun finding things I forgot I had. Just curious, do you have a large craft stash and forget what you have like I do? I placed the string through the hole in the cross and tied a simple knot to hold it. Then cut the string off of the ball and tied another knot to hold the beads on. I had to make a big enough knot so the beads wouldn't slip over it. I love how it turned out. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you would like to win the set, the garland, the forgiven cross, and He is Risen sign, all you have to do is leave the comment, Christ is risen. The winner will be announced on my community tab and on Instagram on March 27th. Good luck, and don't forget to comment. Please take a second to like this video and leave me a comment. This really helps my channel to grow so others just like yourself can find me. If you just found me, I hope you will join our little family by hitting the subscribe button. If you are already part of the family, thank you so much for your love and support. Y'all are the absolute best. Check out my new Amazon store for craft supply and farmhouse home decor recommendations. All the products I use from Amazon in my videos can be found there. Until next time, happy crafting!